I didn't have any weapons, I didn't have any money. But God, if what we are going to do is meant to bring justice, peace and equality among Ivorians, give me the means. And God gave me the means. It wasn't even a man, it wasn't even a friend who gave me the means. That's how I got involved. That's why I said I have no regrets.
In a shocking turn of events, reports have emerged alleging that France may have backed a covert plot to assassinate Ivory Coast's new military leader, a bold figure rising from within the ranks of a country long tethered to foreign influence. Eyewitnesses claim secret operations and sudden movements near the capital were part of a carefully orchestrated plan. Even more explosive, fingers are pointing directly at Alassane Ouattara, the country's long-standing president, as a central figure in this deadly scheme. Is France fighting to keep its grip on West Africa, or is this the beginning of a brutal reckoning?
Something's not right in Ivory Coast. The streets are quieter than usual, but online, chaos. In just a few days, social media exploded with whispers, a coup, an internet blackout, and most shocking of all, the president has vanished. No official word, no public statement, just silence. And in that silence, the rumors grew louder. Some say it's the beginning of a revolution. Others call it disinformation. But the question remains, did a coup really take place in Ivory Coast? Where is the president? And who, if anyone, is in control?
The sudden rise of Ivory Coast's new military leader. Ivory Coast's political landscape underwent a dramatic transformation with the rise of a new military leader, a figure who swiftly became a beacon of change and hope for many Ivorians. His emergence was unforeseen, a bold and decisive assertion of power that unsettled entrenched interests both within the country and beyond its borders. Known for his fierce loyalty to the people and an unyielding determination to safeguard national sovereignty, he posed a serious challenge to the old political order. This military leader quickly gained recognition as a potential game-changer in Ivory Coast's complex political arena. His uncompromising stance against corruption, his resistance to foreign interference, and his ambitious vision for a stronger, more independent nation resonated deeply with a broad coalition of supporters, nationalists, members of the military, and ordinary citizens, many of whom were frustrated by years of political stagnation, economic challenges, and governance failures, rallied behind him with growing enthusiasm. However, such profound shifts in power rarely come without consequences. In West Africa, power changes often disrupt the established elite, provoking intense resistance and political turbulence. The rise of this leader threatened those who had long benefited from the existing system, sparking fears of instability among both domestic actors and foreign stakeholders with vested interests. Despite these challenges, his emergence marked a pivotal moment in Ivory Coast's history, one filled with uncertainty, hope, and the possibility of a new direction for the nation. The alleged French plot. What really happened? Whispers began circulating both in the corridors of power and on the streets. France, Ivory Coast's former colonial master, was allegedly plotting to eliminate the new military leader. While the claim was shocking, it was not entirely surprising to those who have long observed France's deep and often controversial involvement in African politics. For decades, France has maintained significant influence in its former colonies, sometimes supporting regimes aligned with its interests, and at other times, orchestrating covert efforts to remove leaders who challenge its agenda. This alleged assassination plot, if proven true, would add yet another grim chapter to the complex history of French intervention in the region. Sources close to the Ivory Coast government revealed that the plan involved covert operatives working undercover, planned ambushes designed to destabilize the country's new military leadership, and sophisticated misinformation campaigns intended to sow confusion and weaken public support for the leader. But why would France target this particular military figure? The answer lies in his unwavering independence and bold defiance of foreign influence. Unlike many predecessors, he refused to play by the traditional rules set by external powers. Instead, he championed a vision of African sovereignty and self-determination that directly challenged neo-colonial structures. To French interests, this represented a dangerous precedent, a leader who would no longer serve as a compliant partner, but rather as a nationalist force resisting external control. This military leader embodied a new wave of African nationalism, and his rise threatened to disrupt the long-standing patterns of influence that have shaped Ivory Coast's political landscape for decades. In this tense environment, any moves against him would be viewed not only as political maneuvering, but also as a symbol of the broader struggle for true independence in Africa.
To some, he is Africa's Che Guevara. To others, the embodiment of Thomas Sankara's unfinished revolution. His message is simple. Africa must be ruled by Africans. Sovereignty is not negotiable, and unity is the only way forward. Traoré is not alone. His revolution in Burkina Faso is part of a larger domino effect. In Mali, Niger, and Guinea, military leaders have taken similar actions, ejecting French troops, suspending foreign deals, and speaking the language of Pan-Africanism. These countries are forming new alliances. Not just military ones, but ideological, reclaiming identity, independence, and the right to determine their own future.
Ouattara's role: puppet or puppet master? At the heart of the controversy lies Alassane Ouattara, Ivory Coast's longtime president. Ouattara's name has long been associated with strong ties to France, a relationship forged during his years as an international economist and IMF official, and maintained through political alliances. Many accuse him of serving French interests at the expense of Ivorian sovereignty. The shocking twist of this story is the allegation that Ouattara himself might have been behind the assassination plot against the new military leader. This theory stems from internal power struggles within Ivory Coast's elite. Ouattara, wary of losing control and seeing the rising military figure as a threat to his regime, allegedly colluded with French actors to neutralize him. If true, this betrayal is a brutal reminder of how internal divisions can be exploited by foreign powers. Ouattara's government, often accused of corruption and repression, may have seen this plot as a way to maintain its grip on power, while keeping France's support intact.
To be honest, this glowing image of Ouattara as the man who brought economic stability to Ivory Coast, it's a narrative carefully crafted by the French media, not by Ivorians themselves, because the truth on the ground tells a very different story. If Ouattara really transformed the economy, why are so many Ivorians desperate to see him go? Why are the streets filled with fear, frustration, and fatigue? Contrast that with Burkina Faso, where citizens chant for President Ibrahim Traoré to rule forever. It's not because they crave military control, it's because, for the first time in a long time, they see a leader who puts the people first. Western headlines love to praise Ivory Coast's stability. They talk of GDP growth and international investment. But behind those numbers, over 40% of Ivorians still live in poverty. Youth unemployment is rampant, inequality is growing, and the benefits of so-called progress are concentrated in the hands of the few.
Historical context: France's shadow over Ivory Coast. To understand the gravity of these allegations, one must look back at the long history of France's influence over Ivory Coast. Since independence in 1960, France has maintained a strong military, economic, and political presence in the country. The term France-Afrique perfectly describes this neo-colonial network of influence. French military bases in Ivory Coast, economic deals favoring French companies, and political backing for compliant leaders are all part of this complex web. France's interest in Ivory Coast's natural resources, including cocoa, oil, and minerals, fuels its desire to keep a friendly government in place. This history sets the stage for the current drama. The new military leader's defiance was not just a challenge to Ouattara, but to France's decades-old dominance. An assassination attempt allegedly orchestrated by France and Ouattara would be consistent with past tactics used to control leadership transitions in Africa. Reactions within Ivory Coast: fear, anger, and uncertainty. News of the alleged plot sent shockwaves through Ivory Coast. Many citizens reacted with fear and anger, questioning the integrity of their government and its ties to France. The military ranks were shaken, distrust growing between the army and the political leadership. Some Ivorian factions rallied behind the new military leader, seeing him as a symbol of resistance against external domination and corrupt elites. Protests and public demonstrations called for transparency and justice, demanding answers about the government's involvement. Meanwhile, supporters of Ouattara denied the accusations, dismissing them as conspiracies aimed at destabilizing the country. This division deepened political tensions, creating an atmosphere of suspicion and unrest. Ivory Coast faced a precarious moment, caught between its colonial past and the desire for a sovereign future. The regional impact. West Africa watches closely. West African neighbors watched Ivory Coast's crisis with growing concern. The region has seen a surge in coups, insurgencies, and foreign interference in recent years. The alleged assassination plot and Ouattara's possible role highlight the dangerous intersections of internal politics and external manipulation. Countries like Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Mali, all dealing with their own security and political challenges, understood that instability in Ivory Coast could have ripple effects across the region. ECOWAS, the regional economic community, found itself under pressure to respond, balancing respect for national sovereignty with the need to maintain peace. This event also raised questions about the role of former colonial powers in Africa's future. The idea that France could still orchestrate political violence decades after independence sparked fierce debates about the continent's path forward. The role of international media and information warfare. In this digital age, information spreads fast, but not always true. The alleged plot's exposure involved a complex mix of leaks, rumors, and competing narratives. International media, some aligned with Western interests, often presented a sanitized or biased version of events, downplaying the depth of foreign involvement. Meanwhile, social media in Ivory Coast and the diaspora exploded with theories, half-truths, and passionate debate. This information warfare served both as a tool for resistance and as a means for confusion, making it harder for ordinary Ivorians to discern fact from fiction. The battle over the narrative is critical. Who controls the story controls public perception and, ultimately, political legitimacy. The alleged French plot and Ouattara's involvement became a lightning rod for discussions about neo-colonialism, governance, and justice in Ivory Coast. The military's response: a new era of assertiveness? The military, long an influential player in Ivory Coast politics, reacted to the alleged plot with a renewed sense of purpose. The new military leader emerged more determined than ever to defend the country's sovereignty and protect his ranks from political manipulation. This episode exposed deep fractures between the military and the civilian government. Some officers demanded reforms to reduce foreign influence and ensure that military decisions were made without external pressure. Calls for greater transparency and accountability within the defense sector grew louder. The military's increased assertiveness might signal a turning point for Ivory Coast. No longer content to be a tool of external powers or a subordinate to political elites, the armed forces appeared ready to claim a more prominent role in shaping the nation's future. Ouattara's position: defending the regime or losing control. President Ouattara faced one of the most serious crises of his rule. His critics accused him of betrayal and complicity in the assassination attempt, while his supporters called for unity and calm. Ouattara's government launched investigations and sought to reassure the public, but suspicion lingered. This crisis revealed the limits of Ouattara's control and the challenges of maintaining power in a country with divided loyalties and strong nationalist sentiments. His reliance on French support, once an asset, now became a liability, raising questions about his ability to govern independently. Ouattara's next moves would determine whether he could stabilize his regime or whether Ivory Coast would enter a new era of political turmoil. The African narrative: rejecting neo-colonial control.
It started as a routine clearance check at Camp Gallieni, one of Abidjan's most secure military zones. A man in a beige suit approached the checkpoint. Calm, confident, he handed over ECOWAS diplomatic credentials and claimed to be delivering classified communications to the new military command. His French accent was faint, but it was there. The guards scanned the ID. It passed. But the escort team felt something was off. Too calm, too polished, too perfect. They stalled, delayed, brought him inside the secure zone under close watch. What they found changed everything. As he waited, a discreet AES-trained intelligence officer ran a second-layer scan on the man's badge. Red flag. The ID was cloned from a real ECOWAS pass, stolen 3 weeks earlier in Niger. Within seconds, the tone changed.
At the heart of this drama is a broader African narrative, one of rejecting neo-colonial control and reclaiming sovereignty. Ivory Coast's alleged assassination plot is a stark reminder of the ongoing struggle between external powers and African self-determination. Many Africans view this as part of a pattern where foreign actors intervene to shape leadership and policy in ways that serve their interests rather than those of the people. The outrage over the plot reflects a growing impatience with old power dynamics and a desire for truly independent governance. Movements across the continent call for African solutions to African problems, emphasizing diplomacy, regional cooperation, and grassroots empowerment rather than foreign military bases or covert operations. What's next for Ivory Coast? As Ivory Coast stands at this crossroads, the path ahead is uncertain. The alleged French plot and Ouattara's possible involvement have shaken confidence in the political system. The new military leader's survival has galvanized supporters, but also deepened divisions. The country must navigate a delicate balance between confronting internal corruption and foreign interference, while maintaining stability and fostering development. How Ivory Coast handles this crisis will have implications not only for its own future, but for the entire West African region. Key to success will be inclusive dialogue, transparency, and prioritizing national interests over external agendas. The people of Ivory Coast demand accountability and hope that their leaders will rise above old games to build a nation that belongs to them. If these allegations are true, the attempted assassination marks a dark chapter in France's relationship with its former colonies, and a potential betrayal from within Ivory Coast's own government. As the military tightens security and suspicions swirl, one thing is clear: West Africa is entering a new, volatile era of power and resistance. Will the people stand with their new leader, or will foreign-backed forces win the day? The world is watching closely. Like, comment, and subscribe to stay ahead of this developing story, because what's happening in Ivory Coast might just ignite a wave of change across the entire continent.